Stop letting your emotions decide your future. Every time you react without thinking, you give away power. Every time you explode, panic, overshare, or chase validation, you lose leverage. This audiobook is about one thing: control, emotional control, mental toughness, quiet discipline. Because the truth is simple: if you don't master your emotions, they will master you. And once you understand that, you become dangerous. You are losing power, not because you lack intelligence, not because you lack opportunity, not because you lack talent. You are losing power because you react. Every emotional reaction is a transfer of control. The moment you react impulsively, you hand someone else the steering wheel of your life. That's not dramatic. That's reality. Someone criticizes you, you snap back. Someone ignores you, you overthink. Someone disrespects you, you explode. And in every one of those moments, you convince yourself you had no choice, but you did. You always do. You have a choice. That's the difference between emotional people and disciplined people. One reacts automatically, the other responds intentionally. And that distinction, that's power. Look at the workplace. There's always someone talented, smart, capable, skilled, but they can't control their emotions. They get defensive in meetings. They send long emotional emails. They argue to prove they're right. They think they're protecting their reputation. They're destroying it. Because leaders are not chosen by talent alone. They are chosen by stability, by composure, by predictability under pressure. If you can't control yourself, no one will trust you with more. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. You must understand something. Emotional reactions feel powerful in the moment, but they weaken you long term. That angry message, temporary relief, permanent damage. That defensive explanation, momentary control, lasting doubt. That emotional outburst, short-term dominance, long-term distrust. You think you're winning the argument. You're losing leverage. And leverage is everything. The person who stays calm controls the frame. The person who pauses controls the tone. The person who doesn't react controls the outcome. That's the key. Control is not loud. Control is not dramatic. Control is quiet. When someone tries to provoke you, they are fishing for a reaction. Why? Because reactions are predictable, and predictable people are controllable. If I know what makes you angry, I can manipulate you. If I know what makes you insecure, I can steer you. If I know what triggers you, I own you. Read that again in your mind. If they can trigger you, they can control you. So the question becomes simple. Why are you giving strangers that much access to your nervous system? You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their validation to remain composed. You have a choice. Emotional discipline begins with awareness. Notice the heat rising in your chest. Notice the tightening in your jaw. Notice the urge to interrupt, to defend, to correct. That moment right there is where power lives. Most people miss it. They operate on impulse, instinct, ego. But you are not most people. From now on, when you feel triggered, I want you to tell yourself one sentence. This is a test, because that's what it is. Life does not test your intelligence nearly as much as it tests your composure. Anyone can stay calm when things go their way. Anyone can be disciplined when they're comfortable. The real measure of your strength is how you behave when disrespected, misunderstood, or challenged. That's when your character speaks. And here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not about anger. It's about ego. Most reactions are not about injustice. They're about identity. You feel disrespected because your ego feels threatened. You argue because you need to be seen as right. You over-explain because you fear being misunderstood. But power doesn't rush to defend itself. Power is secure. When you are secure, you don't need the last word. When you are disciplined, you don't need to win every exchange. When you are focused, you don't need to react to every opinion. Silence becomes strategy. Let me give you a practical shift. The next time someone criticizes you, instead of defending immediately, say noted. Atit, no emotional essay. No counterattack, no visible frustration, just noted. Watch what happens. You maintain control. You maintain mystery. You maintain leverage. You have a choice. Emotional reactions are expensive. They cost reputation. They cost relationships. They cost opportunities, but controlled responses. They compound. They build respect. They build authority. They build influence. And here's something else most people don't understand. Calmness is intimidating. When someone expects you to explode and you don't, they lose balance. When someone expects you to argue and you don't, they lose footing. When someone expects drama and you offer composure, they lose power because now they can't predict you. And unpredictability is strength. But let's be clear, this is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression is weakness disguised as control. It leaks out later, louder, messier. This is about processing internally and choosing externally. Feel everything. Show discipline. That's the formula. You don't ignore your anger. You study it. You ask, why did that trigger me? What insecurity did that expose? What expectation did I have? Growth begins there. You have a choice. Every single reaction is a fork in the road. Impulse or intention. Emotion or discipline. Ego or strategy. Most people live impulsively. That's why most people stay average. You are building something different. You are building emotional armor, and armor isn't built in comfort. It's built in moments of restraint. Every time you choose silence over argument, you get stronger. Every time you choose pause over impulse, you get sharper. Every time you choose composure over chaos, you gain power. That's how you win long term. Because success is not about who reacts fastest. It's about who remains steady longest. Let others be emotional. Let others overreact. Let others explain themselves endlessly. You remain composed. You remain disciplined. You remain in control. That's the standard now. Asterisk. Because once you understand that your reactions are costing you power, you stop giving them away so cheaply. You don't need their permission. You don't need to prove your strength. You demonstrate it through control. You've mastered your reactions. Now, it's time to eliminate the deeper weakness that fuels them in the first place. You are wasting energy trying to prove yourself. Prove you're smart. Prove you're capable. Prove you're worthy. Prove you are right. And while you're busy proving, someone else is building. That's the difference. The need to prove is emotional. The decision to move is disciplined. You have a choice. Most people don't react with anger. They react with explanation. An explanation feels productive. It feels mature. It feels justified. But often, it's insecurity speaking. When you constantly explain yourself, you communicate one thing. I need you to understand me so I can feel secure. Read that again. Power does not beg to be understood. Power acts. Look at high performers, the truly dangerous ones, the quiet builders. They don't argue in comment sections. They don't write essays defending their vision. They don't chase doubters for validation. They move, and that movement becomes proof. That's the key. When you are emotionally attached to being seen as competent, you start overexposing yourself. You talk too much. You reveal too much. You defend too quickly, and every extra word reduces leverage. It's not about communication. It's about discipline. There is a massive difference. Communication clarifies strategy. Over-explanation exposes. Insecurity, you don't need their permission to execute. You don't need consensus to improve your life. You don't need approval to begin. You have a choice. Ask yourself this: why do you feel the need to prove? Usually, it comes from one of three places. First, fear of being underestimated. Second, fear of being misunderstood. Third, fear of being rejected. All emotional, all ego-driven. And none of them build results, because the truth is simple. The scoreboard doesn't care about opinions. Results silence doubters. Execution eliminates debate. Consistency kills criticism. But when you argue instead of act, you delay your own progress. Let's make this practical. Someone says you'll fail. The emotional response: defend your plan. Explain your strategy. Convince them you've thought it through. The disciplined response: smile, nod, build anyway. That's it. You don't need their permission. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to announce. Every step, the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful, because power doesn't chase validation. Power builds quietly. Here's another truth most people don't want to hear. The desire to prove yourself keeps you tied to the people you're trying to outgrow. Think about that. If you still feel the need to prove something to them, you're still emotionally attached to their opinion. That attachment is weakness. Detachment is strength. It's not about arrogance. It's about focus. You cannot build momentum while constantly checking who's watching. You cannot develop mastery while constantly defending your direction. You cannot grow while seeking applause. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. You have a choice. You can spend the next 5 years explaining your vision, or you can spend the next 5 years executing it. Only one of those builds confidence, because real confidence is not loud, it's earned, and it comes from private wins no one saw. The gym sessions no one applauded. The early mornings no one praised. The uncomfortable risks no one supported. That's where belief is. Built not in arguments, not in explanations, not in emotional debates, but in action. And here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, people start noticing, because you become unpredictable. When someone criticizes you and you don't defend, it unsettles them. When someone doubts you and you don't react, it confuses them. When someone underestimates you and you don't correct them, it disarms them. Why? Because they expected emotion and you gave them discipline. That's power. You must train yourself to replace this question: how do I make them understand me? With this question, what needs to be done next? That shift changes everything. Because the first question is emotional. The second question is strategic. You have a choice. Stop writing paragraphs. Start writing plans. Stop defending your ambition. Start funding it. Stop announcing your goals. Start achieving them. You don't need their permission. And understand this clearly. When you argue, you lower yourself to the level of the critic. When you execute, you rise beyond them. There is no debate at the top, only results. You must become comfortable being misunderstood. Let them think you're crazy. Let them think you're unrealistic. Let them think you're wrong. Because while they're thinking, you're working, and eventually, the results speak in a language no one can argue with. But this requires emotional control. Because the urge to correct people is strong. The urge to defend your name is strong. The urge to respond is strong. You feel it in your chest. That tension, that need, that pull. That is the moment discipline is forged. That is the moment you tell yourself, you have a choice. And instead of reacting, you move quietly, strategically, relentlessly. Because proving is emotional. Building is disciplined, and disciplined people win long term. You are not here to impress people temporarily. You are here to transform permanently. So, from this point forward, adopt one rule. If it doesn't move your life forward, it doesn't deserve your energy. Arguments don't move you forward. Validation doesn't move you forward. Explaining yourself doesn't move you forward. Execution does. Consistency does. Silence does stop. Proving, start moving. Because when you remove the emotional need for validation, you unlock the mental space required for dominance. You've stopped reacting. Now it's time to strengthen the skill that makes emotional control possible in every environment. Power is not in speed, it's in control. Most people believe strength is reacting fast. Quick comeback, immediate answer, instant defense. But the strongest person in the room is usually the quietest one, the one who pauses, the one who waits, the one who lets silence do the work. That's the key. The pause is where discipline lives between what happens to you, and how you respond to it. There is a space. Most people fill that space with emotion. You are going to fill it with control. You have a choice. Someone interrupts you in a meeting. Pause. Someone criticizes your idea. Pause. Someone disrespects. You publicly pause. That pause feels uncomfortable at first. Your heart beats faster. Your ego wants to jump in. Your mouth wants to defend. But discomfort is not danger. It's training, because in that pause, you regain authority over yourself. Without the pause, you are automatic, predictable, reactive. With the pause, you are intentional, strategic, unreadable, and unreadable people are powerful. Think about negotiations. The person who speaks first often loses leverage. The person who rushes to fill silence gives away information. But the person who pauses, they control the pace. Silence creates pressure, and the one who can tolerate pressure without reacting wins. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. You don't need their permission to take a second. You don't need to answer immediately. You don't need to defend instantly. You have a choice. The pause accomplishes 3 critical things. First, it interrupts emotion. Emotion is fast. Discipline is slow. When you pause, you slow the moment down. And when you slow the moment down, you weaken emotion's grip. Second, it forces clarity. Instead of reacting with, "That's not true," you ask yourself, what response serves me best? That question changes outcomes. Third, it signals strength. Calm pauses communicate control. They tell the room, "I am not rushed. I am not shaken. I decide when I speak." That's authority. Now let's be honest. Most of your problems come from moments you didn't pause. The text you regret. The argument that escalated. The decision made out of frustration. The opportunity lost because you reacted emotionally. All of it could have been softened or eliminated by a pause. That's why this skill is non-negotiable. You train it intentionally. When someone triggers you, instead of speaking immediately, take one breath, just one. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. That single breath creates distance. Distance creates perspective. Perspective creates power. You have a choice. You can let the moment control you, or you can control the moment. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's about deciding when. And if it deserves expression, the pause is not weakness. It is calculated restraint. And calculated restraint builds intimidation, because when people can't read your reaction, they become uncertain. Uncertainty shifts power. Imagine someone trying to provoke you. They expect anger. They expect defense. They expect explanation. Instead, you pause. You look at them calmly. You respond slowly. Now they feel exposed, because their emotional energy has nowhere to land. That's the power of composure. And here's something even deeper. The pause doesn't just control your external life, it transforms your internal life. When you learn to pause before reacting externally, you begin pausing internally to DOT before self-doubt spirals. Pause before negative self-talk escalates, before assuming the worst. Pause, That space becomes your training ground. You stop believing every thought. You stop obeying every emotion. You stop reacting to every internal impulse. That's mental toughness. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's disciplined. And discipline compounds. The more you practice pausing, the more natural it becomes. At first, you'll forget. You'll react. You'll slip. That's fine. Awareness is progress. The moment you catch yourself, mid-reaction, and correct it, that's growth. You're rewiring yourself, because most people live on autopilot. You're turning autopilot off. You are choosing intention. You are choosing control. You are choosing power. You don't need their permission to take your time. You don't need to rush your responses to please people. You don't need to match someone else. Emotional intensity. Let them be loud. Let them rush. Let them expose themselves. You remain measured. You remain deliberate. You remain calm. And here's the ultimate truth. Life rewards the person who can delay reaction. Financially, patience builds wealth. Professionally, patience builds reputation. Emotionally, patience builds stability. The pause is patience in action. It's not about being slow. It's about being precise. Because when you respond without pausing, you're gambling. When you respond after pausing, you are calculating. And calculated people rarely lose. So from now on, install this rule. Nothing deserves an immediate emotional reaction. Not praise, not criticism, not opportunity, not rejection. Pause, even with good news, especially with bad news. Train yourself to be the most composed person in the room, because composure is currency, and the one who manages it best controls the exchange. You have a choice in every heated moment, in every tense conversation, in every unexpected challenge, impulse or pause, emotion or discipline, reaction or control. Choose the pause long enough and it becomes your identity. And once it becomes your identity, no one can rush you. No one can bait you. No one can destabilize. You are no longer reacting. You are responding. And now that you understand how to create space between stimulus and response, it's time to strengthen what happens inside that space. Emotional control does not mean emotional absence. It means emotional discipline. There is a difference. Weak people suppress emotions. Undisciplined people express them recklessly. Strong people feel everything and choose what to reveal. That's the key. You are not here to become cold. You are here to become controlled. Because pretending you don't feel anger, jealousy, fear, or insecurity is not strength. It's denial. And denial always leaks. But displaying every emotion you feel, that's instability. You have a choice. You can feel deeply without reacting publicly. That's power. Let's make something clear right now. Your emotions are data. Anger tells you a boundary was crossed. Jealousy tells you what you desire. Fear tells you where you feel unprepared. Sadness tells you what matters. Emotions are information, but information is useless without discipline. Most people treat emotions as commands. I'm angry, so I must respond. I'm hurt, so I must confront. I'm insecure, so I must defend. No, you feel it. You analyze it. You decide what to do with it. You have a choice. The strongest person in the room is often the one feeling the most, but revealing the least. Why? Because emotional exposure creates vulnerability in competitive environments, in business, in leadership, in negotiations, even in relationships. When people see exactly what shakes you, they know exactly where to apply pressure. That's why showing everything is dangerous. It's not about being fake. It's about being strategic. Feel everything. Show discipline. That is the formula. Imagine someone criticizes you publicly. Inside, You feel the sting. Your ego reacts. Your chest tightens good. Notice it, but externally. You remain composed. You nod, you respond calmly. Or sometimes, you don't respond at all. Because it's not about anger. It's about control, and control is silent. Understand this. Emotional mastery begins internally, not externally. When you feel something intense, instead of asking, "How do I respond?" ask, "Why did this move me?" That question builds self-awareness. Maybe their comment triggered an insecurity you haven't fixed yet. Maybe their success triggered your own comparison habit. Maybe their rejection exposed your fear of not being enough. Good, now you've identified. The weakness, that's growth. But broadcasting that emotion to the world before understanding it, that's immaturity. You don't need their permission to process privately. You don't owe the world your emotional transparency. You owe yourself emotional understanding. You have a choice. You can be emotionally reactive or emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is not about soft communication. It's about regulated behavior. Regulation is strength. Because once you regulate your emotional display, you gain 3 advantages. First, predictability of self. You are no longer surprised by your own reactions. Second, unpredictability to others. They can't read you easily. They can't manipulate your state. Third, internal clarity instead of chaos. You create analysis. That's power. Now, let's address something important. Feel everything. Show nothing. Does not mean become emotionally unavailable. It means choose timing. Timing is discipline. If you're hurt in a relationship, you don't explode mid-argument. You process. Then you communicate calmly. If you're frustrated at work, you don't vent impulsively. You assess. Then you address it strategically. If you're insecure about something, you don't overcompensate. You improve privately. That's maturity. It's not about hiding emotion. It's about earning the right moment to express it, and most moments don't deserve it. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. The world respects composure more than emotional honesty. That doesn't mean the world is right. It means the world rewards stability. When people see that you remain calm under pressure, they trust you. When people see that you don't crumble under criticism, they elevate you. When people see that you don't overreact under stress, they follow you because stability feels safe. And leaders create safety. You are building leadership. Energy. Even if you don't lead a company, even if you don't manage a team, you lead your decisions. You lead your habits. You lead your future. And leadership begins with emotional restraint. You have a choice. Instead of venting, write it down. Instead of exploding, breathe it out. Instead of exposing insecurity, work on it silently. Quiet improvement is more powerful than loud emotion. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop showing every emotion, your words gain weight. If you rarely express anger, when you do it matters. If you rarely show frustration, when you do, it's taken seriously. If you rarely speak emotionally, when you speak, people listen. Scarcity creates value. That applies to emotion too. Don't flood the world with your internal state. Curate it, control it, strengthen it. You don't need their permission to feel deeply, but you don't need to perform. Your emotions, either you are not here to impress people with vulnerability. You are here to build resilience. Resilience is built by sitting with emotion without obeying it. Anger rises. You sit with it. Fear appears. You sit with it. Insecurity whispers. You sit with it, and instead of reacting, you analyze. That's discipline. Because here's the reality. If you cannot sit with your own emotions quietly, you will always try to discharge them loudly, and loud discharge leads to regret. Emotional mastery is private work. It's done alone, in reflection, in journaling, in honest, self-confrontation, not in public arguments, not in dramatic displays, not in impulsive reactions. You feel everything, you show control, and over time, something powerful happens. Your emotions stop controlling you. They still exist, but they no longer dominate your decisions. They inform you, and you decide. That is emotional authority, and once you build emotional authority internally, no one externally can destabilize you. You've learned to pause. You've learned to feel. Without reacting, now it's time to eliminate the biggest excuse people use to justify emotional behavior. Your mood is not your master, but most people live like it is. I don't feel like it. I'm not motivated today. I'm just not in the right headspace. That language sounds harmless. It's destructive, because when your mood dictates your actions, your progress becomes unstable, and unstable effort produces unstable results. That's the key. Winners do not wake up motivated. Every day, they wake up disciplined. You have a choice. You can act based on how you feel, or you can act based on who you decided to become. Those are not the same thing. Mood is emotional. Discipline is identity. If you only work when you feel inspired, you will always be inconsistent. If you only train when you feel energized, you will always be average. If you only show up when you feel confident, you will never build confidence. It's not about motivation. It's about standards. Do not change with weather. Standards do not adjust to inconvenience. Standards do not disappear. Because you're tired, they remain, and you either rise to them or you don't. You have a choice. Let's break this illusion right now. People say, I need to feel motivated. No, you need to move first. Action creates motivation. Motion creates clarity. Discipline creates confidence. Waiting to feel ready is emotional weakness disguised as self-awareness. You will rarely feel ready. That's normal. Your brain prefers comfort. Comfort avoids growth. Growth feels uncomfortable. So when you say, I don't feel like it, what you're really saying is, I want comfort. But comfort doesn't build strength. Pressure does. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do. Read that again in your mind. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do. You don't feel like going to the gym. Go anyway. You don't feel like having the hard conversation. Have it anyway. You don't feel like working on your goals today. Work anyway. Because every time you override your mood, you build authority over yourself. And self-authority is power. Most people are controlled by 3 moods: laziness, doubt, frustration. Laziness says, later. Doubt says, you're not ready. Frustration says, why bother? Discipline says, now. Discipline says, learn. Discipline says, continue. You have a choice. Which voice do you obey? Here's something critical. Your future does not care about your current mood. Your goals do not pause because you're tired. Your competition does not slow down because you're uninspired. The world keeps moving, and if you only move when you feel good, you fall behind. But let's go deeper. Why do moods control people? Because they identify with them. I am tired. I am unmotivated. I am overwhelmed. No, you feel tired. You feel unmotivated. You feel overwhelmed. Feelings are temporary states. Identity is permanent. When you separate who you are from how you feel, everything changes. You are disciplined. Even when you feel lazy, you are committed. Even when you feel doubtful, you are focused. Even when you feel distracted. That's the mental shift. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Let me give you a simple rule. Never make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Don't quit on a bad day. Don't lash out in a heated moment. Don't abandon your goal because of one discouraging result. Pause. Remember Chapter 3. Pause, then act according to your standard, not your mood, because moods fluctuate daily. Standards remain. High performers build systems, so mood becomes irrelevant. They schedule workouts, not feel-outs. They block time for work, not whenever I'm inspired. They create routines, not emotional negotiations. Remove negotiation from your life. When the alarm goes off, there is no debate. When it's time to train, there is no discussion. When it's time to execute, there is no emotional check-in. You move. That's the key. The less you negotiate with your emotions, the stronger you become. Every time you say, "I don't feel like it, but I will," you win. Small win. But small wins compound. And over time, you develop something rare. Reliability. Reliable. People trust themselves. And when you trust yourself, your confidence skyrockets, because confidence is not built by hype. It's built by kept promises. You said you would show. You showed up. You said you would finish. You finished. You said you would stay consistent. You stayed consistent. That's discipline, and discipline over mood creates unstoppable momentum. Let's be clear. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to recover. You are allowed to adjust, but rest is scheduled. Recovery is intentional. Adjustment is strategic, not emotional. There's a difference between recovery and avoidance. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. You have a choice. Every morning, every evening, every time you feel resistance. Emotion says comfort. Discipline says growth. Emotion says later. Discipline says now. Emotion says it's too hard. Discipline says that's why it matters. If you master this chapter alone, your life changes. Because once you stop obeying your moods, you stop being fragile. You become stable, and stability under pressure is what separates leaders from followers. You've learned to control reactions. You've learned to stop proving. You've learned to pause. You've learned to feel without displaying. Now, you've learned to act regardless of mood. But there's another emotional trap that destroys discipline if left unchecked. Attachment creates anxiety. Anxiety destroys clarity, and clarity is required for power. That's the cycle most people never break. They want something so badly that they choke under the pressure of wanting it. The promotion, the relationship, the business deal, the approval. They grip it tightly in their mind, and that grip makes them emotional. That's the key. When you are emotionally attached to an outcome, you become fragile, because now your peace depends on something you cannot fully control. You have a choice. You can commit to effort, or you can attach to outcome, but you cannot do both without losing composure. Detachment does not mean apathy. It means stability. It means you give your best effort without emotionally collapsing if the result goes differently than expected. That is mental toughness. Look at sales. The salesperson who desperately needs the deal speaks differently. Their tone shifts. Their energy becomes anxious. They push too hard. The detached salesperson, calm. Measured, because they don't need this one outcome. And ironically, they close more deals. Why? Because desperation repels. Calm attracts. It's not about desire. It's about discipline. You can want something deeply, but you cannot let that desire control your emotional state. You don't need this one opportunity. You need long-term consistency. That's the shift. When you detach from a single outcome, you free yourself to focus on performance. And performance is the only thing you truly control. You have a choice. Focus on what you control. Release what you don't. You cannot control other people's Decisions, market conditions, timing, random setbacks you can control. Preparation, effort, composure, adaptability when you obsess over what you can't control. You create emotional turbulence. When you dominate what you can control, you create stability. And stability wins. Attachment also shows up in relationships. When you are emotionally dependent on someone staying, you act differently. You overtext. You overexplain. You tolerate disrespect. You fear silence. That fear shifts the power dynamic, because when you need someone more than they need you, you lose leverage. But when you detach, not from caring, but from dependency, everything changes. You become calm. You stop chasing. You stop overreacting. You stop panicking. And suddenly, your presence feels grounded. Detachment is attractive because it communicates. Self-sufficiency. You have a choice. Care deeply, but remain steady. This applies to goals too. Many people sabotage themselves because they are terrified of failure. They think, this doesn't work, I'm nothing. That thought creates pressure. Pressure creates tension. Tension destroys performance. Detach if it works. Excellent if it fails. Lesson either way. You grow. That mindset eliminates fear. It's not about avoiding disappointment. It's about not being defined by it. Here's a powerful internal rule. Commit fully. Expect nothing. That sounds extreme, but it creates freedom. When you expect nothing, you are not crushed by delays. When you expect nothing, you are not shocked by rejection. When you expect nothing, you remain emotionally neutral. Neutral is powerful because neutrality allows quick recovery, and recovery speed determines long-term success. The faster you recover emotionally, the faster you adapt strategically. Most people stay stuck in emotionally disappointment. You move on. That's discipline. And here's something even deeper. Attachment is often ego in disguise. You're not attached to the outcome. You're attached to what it would say about you if I get the promotion. I'm valuable. If this person chooses me, I'm worthy. If my business succeeds, I'm important. That's ego attachment. But your worth is not determined by a single result. Your identity is built by constancy. It's not about failure. It's about resilience. When you detach, you stop riding emotional roller coasters. No extreme highs, no devastating lows, just steady. Execution.com. Effort. Focused improvement. You have a choice. React emotionally to outcomes. Or respond strategically to them. Let's make this practical. You apply for a position. You prepare well. You perform well. You don't get it. Emotional reaction. Self-doubt. Overthinking. Resentment. Disciplined response. Analyze performance. Adjust. Apply again. That's detachment. In action, you gave effort. You released expectation. You moved forward. That's the formula. And once you master detachment, something powerful happens. You become fearless, because fear is rooted in loss. But if you are not emotionally clinging to a single outcome, what is there to lose? You try, you learn, you adapt, you continue. That's strength. Detachment does not mean you don't care. It means you don't crumble. And the person who doesn't crumble under disappointment becomes unstoppable. Because life will test you. Plans will fail. People will leave. Opportunities will disappear. But if your emotional state collapses every time something changes, you will always feel unstable. Detachment creates emotional shock absorption. You bend. You adjust. You continue. That's mental toughness. You don't need this one win. You need long-term growth. You don't need this one person. You need self-respect. You don't need this one outcome. You need discipline. You have a choice. Cling or release. Grip tightly or move freely. When you release attachment, you unlock calm performance. And calm performance is deadly. You've learned to control reactions. You've learned to stop proving. You've learned to pause. You've learned to feel without showing. You've learned to act regardless of mood. Now you've learned to detach from outcomes, but there is one battlefield left, the one inside your own mind. Before you control the world, you must control the voice in your head, because that voice determines everything. Your emotions follow. Your thoughts, your actions follow your emotions. Your results follow your actions. So if your thoughts are weak, your life becomes unstable. That's the key. Most people think their biggest enemy is external. It's not. It's internal. Commentary. The constant narration, the doubt, the comparison, the replaying of mistakes, the imagining of worst-case scenarios. You have a choice. You can believe every thought you think, or you can challenge it. That shift changes your entire life. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your mind is not naturally disciplined. It is naturally protective, and protection often looks like fear. Don't try. You might fail. Don't speak up. You might look stupid. Don't risk it. Stay safe. That voice feels intelligent. It's limiting, because growth requires exposure, and exposure triggers fear. But fear is not a command. It's information. Remember that just because you think something doesn't make it true. Most people never question their thoughts. They assume, I feel insecure, so I must not be good enough. I feel nervous, so I must not be prepared. I feel behind, so I must be failing. No, feelings are not facts. They are signals. You have a choice. You can let your inner dialogue run automatically, or you can train it deliberately. Let's make this practical. You make a mistake. Automatic thought, I always mess up. Disciplined thought, what specifically went wrong and how do I fix it? See the difference? One attacks identity. The other improves strategy. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Your inner dialogue must become your coach, not your critic. Critics attack. Coaches instruct. Critics say, you're not enough. Coaches say, improve here. That's the shift. If you wouldn't speak to a respected friend the way you speak to yourself, your internal dialogue is toxic, and toxicity destroys confidence. Confidence is built through internal consistency. You say you can handle it. You act like you can handle it. You remind yourself you can handle it. That repetition builds belief, and belief fuels discipline. You have a choice. Replace, why does this always happen to me? With, how do I respond strategically? Replace, I'm overwhelmed. With, what's the next action? Replace, I can't handle this. With, I'll handle it step by step. Your language shapes your nervous system. Negative internal language creates anxiety, calm. Directive language creates stability. This is not positive thinking. It's controlled thinking. Big difference. Positive thinking ignores reality. Controlled thinking addresses reality with strength. Let's go deeper. Comparison is one of the most destructive inner dialogues. You scroll. You see someone ahead of you. Your mind says, they're better, they're faster. I'm behind. That thought weakens you instantly because it shifts your focus from effort to envy. And envy paralyzes progress. Instead, discipline your mind to say, they're ahead in their lane. I'm building in mine. That's it. Short, controlled, focused. You don't need their permission to move at your pace. And here's another dangerous pattern. Catastrophizing. One setback becomes, this is a disaster. One rejection becomes, I'll never succeed. One mistake becomes, I ruined everything. That's emotional exaggeration. You must interrupt it. Pause. Remember Chapter 3. Pause. Then ask, is this permanent? Most of the time, it's not. It's Temporary dot and temporary problems don't deserve permanent eyes. You have a choice. You can dramatize difficulty, or you can dissect it. Dissection builds clarity. ClarityBuilds.com. Calm builds performance. Performance builds results. Results build confidence. It all starts in your head. Control your thoughts. And you control your emotional state. Control your emotional state. And you control your decisions. Control your decisions. And you control your life. That's the chain. And here's the truth most people ignore. You are listening to yourself all day. So if that voice is weak, you are constantly weakening yourself. Strengthen the voice. Make it direct. Make it disciplined. Make it calm. Instead of, I hope this works, say I'll adjust until it works. Instead of, I'm nervous, say I'm prepared. Instead of, what if I fail, say, what will I learn? That's mental toughness, not loud confidence. Quiet control. You don't need hype. You need stability. And stability is built through repetition. Every time you catch a negative thought and replace it, you are rewiring your brain. That's not motivational. Language, that's neuroscience. Repetition builds pathways. So repeat strength. Repeat clarity. Repeat discipline until it becomes automatic. Eventually, your first thought becomes controlled instead of chaotic. That's mastery. And once your inner dialogue is disciplined, something powerful happens. External noise loses influence. Criticism hits softer. Pressure feels manageable. Fear feels smaller. Because your internal foundation is strong. You have a choice. Let your mind run wild or run it yourself. Because if you don't control your thoughts, they will control your emotions. And if they control your emotions, you lose power. You've mastered reactions. You've mastered detachment. You've mastered detachment. You've mastered discipline over mood. Now your internal voice is becoming an ally instead of an enemy. But strength isn't tested in comfort. It's tested under pressure. Comfort does not build strength. Pressure does. Most people avoid pressure. They avoid discomfort. They avoid tension, and then they wonder why they crumble when life applies force. That's the key. You don't wait for pressure to test you. You train under it intentionally because pressure reveals what comfort hides. You have a choice. You can seek easy environments, or you can build resilience in difficult ones. Only one creates mental toughness. Think about it. If you only work when conditions are perfect, if you only perform when you feel confident, if you only speak when you feel safe, you are fragile. Fragility is exposed the moment something unexpected happens. But when you deliberately train in discomfort, pressure becomes familiar. And familiar. Pressure feels manageable. It's not about pain, it's about adaptation. The mind adapts to what it repeatedly experiences. If you repeatedly experience comfort, you become comfort dependent. If you repeatedly experience challenge, you become challenge capable. That's discipline. Let's make this practical. Physical training is an obvious example. You lift weights slightly heavier than last week. It feels uncomfortable. Your muscles strain, but that strain builds growth. Now apply that principle mentally. Have difficult conversations. Instead of avoiding them, volunteer for responsibility. Instead of hiding from it, speak up. In rooms that intimidate you, take calculated risks. Expose yourself to controlled stress, because controlled stress builds controlled responses. You have a choice. Avoid discomfort now and suffer instability later, or embrace discomfort now and build stability forever. Pressure is not your enemy. Unpreparedness is. And preparation happens under tension. Here's something powerful. The first time you face something hard, it feels overwhelming. The 10th time, it feels normal. Repetition reduces fear. Exposure builds confidence. Avoidance amplifies. Anxiety. That's the pattern. So if you want to stop being emotionally shaken by challenges, stop avoiding them. Walk toward them calmly, strategically, intentionally. It's not about recklessness. It's about growth. You don't jump into chaos blindly. You increase difficulty gradually. Cold showers to train discomfort, tolerance, timed work. Sessions to train focus under pressure. Public speaking. Practice to train composure under scrutiny. Hard workouts to train endurance when tired. Each one sends your brain a message. I can handle discomfort. That belief changes everything because most emotional breakdowns happen when discomfort feels unfamiliar. But if discomfort is normal to you, you remain calm. That's power. And here's the deeper layer. Training under pressure rewires your identity. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You start seeing yourself as adaptable. Adaptable people are dangerous because nothing shocks them for long. Bad news. Adjust. Unexpected change. Adapt. Increased workload. Organize. You don't panic. You respond. That's discipline in motion. You have a choice when life applies pressure. You can say, "Why is this happening to me?" Or you can say, "This is training." That mindset alone reduces emotional chaos because instead of resisting discomfort, you reinterpret it and interpretation shapes. Emotion pressure becomes opportunity. Stress becomes sharpening. Challenge becomes strengthening. It's not about emotion. It's about framing. Here's something else most people miss. If you avoid pressure, you become hypersensitive. Small problems feel huge. Minor criticism feels devastating. Tiny setbacks feel catastrophic. Why? Because your tolerance is low. But when you regularly expose yourself to difficulty, your tolerance rises, and high tolerance equals calm performance. That's why elite performers look relaxed. Under intense situations, they've been there before, many times. Training under pressure builds emotional immunity. Immunity doesn't mean you don't feel stress. It means stress doesn't control you. You feel it, you breathe, you execute anyway. You have a choice. You can build your tolerance now or let life force you to build it later. And life's version is usually harsher. Choose controlled growth over chaotic lessons. Seek out things that stretch you, not to prove anything, but to strengthen yourself. Remember Chapter 2. Stop proving, start building. Pressure is your gym. Every hard moment is a repetition. Every uncomfortable decision is a set. Every disciplined response is progress. Stack enough of those, and you become stable. Stable under deadlines, stable under criticism, stable under uncertainty. And stability under pressure is rare. Rare equals valuable. Valuable equals powerful. Let others complain about stress. Let others collapse under deadlines. Let others avoid hard paths. You train there because when you train under pressure long enough, pressure stops feeling personal. It becomes procedural. You don't take it emotionally. You handle it strategically, and that shift changes your entire trajectory. You've learned to control reactions. You've learned to detach from outcomes. You've learned to master your inner dialogue. Now you're building resilience through pressure. But there is one final discipline that multiplies all of this. Power. Silence. Silence is power. But most people are terrified of it. They fill it with explanations. They fill it with opinions. They fill it with emotional reactions. Because silence feels vulnerable. That's the key. Silence forces you to sit with yourself. And most people haven't trained for that. You have a choice. You can speak impulsively, or you can let silence work for you. The disciplined person understands something critical. Not every thought deserves to be spoken. Not every plan deserves to be announced. Not every emotion deserves to be expressed. Silence protects energy. Energy builds results. Let's start with this truth. The more you talk about your goals, the less urgency you feel to execute them. Why? Because talking creates a false sense of progress. You announce the business idea. You post about the fitness journey. You declare the transformation and the brain rewards. You socially, before you've earned it, physically. That's dangerous, because validation replaces discipline. You don't need their permission. You don't need applause before effort. You need work. Quiet work. There's a reason the strongest moves are often made privately. Because silence eliminates distraction. When fewer people know your plans, there are fewer opinions, fewer doubts, fewer projections, fewer emotional influences. Silence creates focus. Focus builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. That's the formula. Now let's talk about silence in conflict. When someone tries to provoke you, silence is disarming. They expect reaction. They expect defense. They expect explanation. Instead, you pause. You say little. You remain calm. That unsettles them. Because emotional, people need feedback. When you don't give it, you keep leverage. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. Silence prevents escalation. Arguments require 2 participants. Remove one, and the conflict loses fuel. You have a choice. Escalate with emotion or neutralize with silence. Silence is not weakness. It is controlled restraint. But understand this carefully. Silence is not avoidance. Avoidance hides from problems. Discipline chooses timing. If something must be addressed, address it, but address it strategically, not emotionally, not publicly, not impulsively. Silence gives you time to think, and thinking creates better outcomes. Let's go deeper. Silence also protects your growth. When you are improving quietly, eliminate pressure. There's no need to perform publicly, no need to prove progress, no need to defend setbacks. You build at your own pace, and when results appear, they speak louder than announcements ever could. You have a choice. Broadcast every step or let your results introduce you. There's another level to this. Silence builds mystery, and mystery builds respect. When people can't fully read you, treat you carefully. When you don't overshare, your words carry weight. When you speak rarely, people listen closely. Scarcity creates value. That applies to speech too. If you speak constantly, your words dilute. If you speak selectively, your words matter. It's not about being cold, it's about being intentional. Here's a powerful shift. Before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it necessary? Is it productive? Is it disciplined? If the answer is no, stay silent. That single filter eliminates 80% of emotional mistakes, because most mistakes are verbal. Things said too quickly, too emotionally, too defensively. Silence eliminates regret. You have a choice. React instantly or respond deliberately. And remember, you don't need to correct every misconception. You don't need to defend every criticism. You don't need to explain every decision. The more secure you become, the less you feel the need to justify yourself. That's growth. That's emotional control. That's mental. Toughness silence also strengthens your inner world. When you stop filling every quiet moment with noise, music, scrolling, constant talking, you start hearing your own thoughts clearly. That clarity improves decision-making. And improved decisions improve outcomes. Silence sharpens awareness. Awareness sharpens discipline. Discipline sharpens power. That's the chain. Most people are loud because they are unsure, confident. People are measured. Insecure people over-explain. Secure people execute. You don't need their permission. You don't need constant recognition. You don't need to win conversations. You need to win your life. And life is not won through constant commentary. It's won through consistent action. Let others announce. Let others argue. Let others overshare. You build quietly, strategically, relentlessly. Because when the results arrive, they make more noise than you ever could. Silence is not empty. It is controlled. It is patient. It is powerful. You've learned to control reactions. You've learned to master your inner dialogue. You've learned to detach from outcomes. You've trained under pressure. Now you understand the force of silence. There is only one final transformation left. The ultimate evolution of emotional discipline. Untouchable does not mean unreachable. It means unshakable. It means your emotional state is no longer controlled by circumstances, criticism, praise, or pressure. It means you decide. That's the final level. Most people are moved by everything. A compliment lifts them too high. A criticism drops them too low. A setback breaks momentum. A wind makes them careless. They live on emotional extremes. You will live in control. You have a choice. Untouchable. People are not cold. They are centered. They don't suppress emotion. They regulate it. They don't avoid challenges. They absorb them. They don't chase validation. They generate self-respect internally. That's the shift to become untouchable. You must integrate everything you've learned. You've mastered your reactions. You stopped proving. You learned to pause. You felt everything without showing weakness. You chose discipline over mood. You detached from outcomes. You controlled your inner dialogue. You trained under pressure. You embraced silence. Now, you combine it all. Untouchable is not a personality. It's a standard. It's waking up and knowing, no matter what happens today, I remain composed. That statement alone changes your nervous system because now the world is not something you fear. It's something you handle. You have a choice. You can be emotionally available to chaos or emotionally anchored in discipline. Anchored people don't drift. They adjust without losing stability, and stability is rare. Rare. People are respected. Respect creates influence. Influence creates opportunity. But it begins internally. Let's be clear. You will still feel anger. You will still feel disappointment. You will still feel fear. The difference? You won't be controlled by them. Emotion becomes background noise. Discipline becomes foreground. Action. It's not about emotion. It's about control. Imagine someone attempts to disrespect you. Old version. React, defend, escalate. Untouchable version. Assess, decide. Respond minimally, or not at all. Because you no longer need to prove strength. You demonstrate it through composure. Untouchable means your identity is not fragile. You don't crumble under rejection. You don't inflate under praise. You don't panic under pressure. You remain steady. And steady people win long term because life is not a single event. It's a series of moments. And if you control each moment, you control your trajectory. Here's another truth. Untouchable people recover fast. Failure. Adjust. Criticism. Extract lesson. Loss. Regroup. Delay. Stay consistent. They don't waste time in emotional spirals. They move because momentum is more important than mood. You have a choice. Stay stuck emotionally or stay moving strategically. Untouchable also means selective attention. You don't respond to everything. You don't internalize every opinion. You don't absorb every energy. You choose what enters your mind. That's power. Because if you consume chaos constantly, you become chaotic. But if you filter carefully, remain focused, your attention is currency. Spend it wisely. Untouchable People guard their focus aggressively. No endless arguments, no pointless debates, no emotional distractions. If it doesn't build the mission, it doesn't deserve energy. That discipline compounds over months, over years, until one day people look at you and say, "Nothing seems to shake you." And they're right, because you trained for this. This was intentional. You built this composure. Repetition by repetition, moment by moment, choice by choice. You have a choice every single day: react or respond, prove or build, rush or pause, feel or display, obey mood or obey standard, cling or detach, spiral or reframe, avoid pressure or train in it, overshare or move silently. Those small choices create an untouchable identity, and identity determines destiny. Untouchable is not about ego. It's about freedom. Freedom from emotional volatility. Freedom from external control. Freedom from internal chaos. When you are untouchable, you operate from clarity. When you operate from clarity, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, your life improves. That's the chain. And here's the final truth. No one can give you this. No one can teach it into you without your participation. You build it through discipline, through awareness, through repetition. You don't need their permission. You don't need validation. You don't need ideal conditions. You need control. And control begins the moment you decide, "My emotions will inform me. They will not command me." That sentence alone separates leaders from followers, because followers are reactive. Leaders are regulated. Followers are emotional. Leaders are disciplined. Followers are shaken. Leaders are steady. You decide which one. You are right now, not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Now, you have a choice, and if you choose discipline consistently, if you choose composure repeatedly, if you choose control deliberately, you become untouchable. And once you become untouchable, you become unstoppable. Control is the difference. The difference between reacting and responding, between winning and collapsing, between being respected and being dismissed. Your emotions are not the enemy. Your lack of discipline is. You have a choice. Every moment, every conversation, every trigger. You don't need their permission. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to react. You need control, because the person who masters their emotions masters their life. Now, the question is simple. Will you keep reacting, or will you take control? Decide starting today.